Okay, morning everybody, and please come out in front. There's so many people out there that there's empty seats in the front. Hi, Tatiana. How are you?
Good morning.
Okay, once again, a warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for getting up early and being here. Shows you a sign of commitment. I would also like to thank the FIX organizers for hosting us this morning. My name is Ismail Momoniat. I've been the former head of the acting director general of the National Treasury of South Africa. Became part of the antique furniture there. I'm co-leading this task force with Laurent Tubiana, who played a major role in the CEO of the European Climate Foundation and who's well known for her role in the groundbreaking 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. For those who are not aware, the Global Solidarity Levies Task Force was officially launched at COP28 by Presidents Macron, President Rato, and Prime Minister Motley. The aim of the task force, as we know, we've got to find ways to fill the gap, and the gap is big, given the demands of climate finance. And one needs various approaches, and this is one of the approaches to get some solidarity levies. I think all aware in this room that climate change is a global problem, requires globally coordinated action, and the idea, I think, of solidarity, one of the themes for the G20 as well, is to also extend into the levies area to help fund this gap. And I should add, we see, these levies as not just addressing climate change directly, but hand in hand with the whole issue of development, especially in low-income economies or on this continent of ours in Africa. And to do so in a way that, countries don't get more indebted. I think we've seen the challenges facing us with very high debt levels, particularly even on this continent. So we're hoping to deliver an outcome or to get some agreement on some levies, at least by COP30, towards the end of the year. So that's the hope and the intention. Now, today, let me introduce our two guests. I would like to thank our first speaker, Minister Thani Mohamed Sulihi, who is the Minister of State for Francophone and International Partnership from France. Welcome. And fellow speaker, who I know now for a while, Tatiana Rosito, who is the Secretary for International Affairs at the Ministry of Finance in Brazil. So thank you to both of you to agree to speak. But without further ado, Minister, over to you. You could sit here, but you could also speak from there. I think it might be better if you go up.
Yeah, as you want. Thank you very much for your welcome. I'm going to speak in French. Is the translation is okay? Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, allow me first of all to thank the Secretary of FIX for the organization of this session about the solidarity in the world. I'm very happy to be here to be with you to talk about this topic about the development of finance. It is a moment when the United States and other places as in French, the development is a problem. There is 3 months. The conclusion of COP19 has allowed us to have 2 statements. The need of financing to fight against poverty. We cannot do it without having finance, and also the position and development countries. These can only lead to vain discussions. So we are obliged. This has allowed us to lead the president of France to have a summit for a new financial World Pact in June 2023. The aim was to put everybody together to see how we can move forward in the finance around the world and to adapt the issues of our century. The first meeting was a stone to put energies together so that we can see what we can do. Since we have been meeting regularly to see how we can work together, as in the summit in Africa, in Kenya in September 2023. Among those ways, the tax is a way that we cannot move away so that we can reduce differences and have the same objectives when we come to development in terms of climate. This is how to restore the trust and the equity in the finance system in the world. So we are really convinced that France and Kenya have chosen to launch in COP 2018 the contribution about finance around the world. This would not have been possible without the support of European help. So our ambition is double. The first priority is to identify the tools of international fiscality and to have public resources to finance the transition, which can be green in a way which is really equitable. Beyond financing that we can have around the world, this finance can help us reduce the sector of more that can have many pollutions. So this work has really gone forward last year thanks to the work that experts have done. So we're going to continue, and the work will continue in 2025. So our second priority is to build in COP30 political agreements where many options will be adopted. The solution that we studied will support the process which exists already, and also propose some other solutions. Many countries, 10 of them, are already together, and we are calling other partners who are interested to join this movement. 2025 will be a best year for the development of climate, with Belém in the head. So we also have many other things to do. I'm thinking about the 4th conference of sustainable development, which will happen in Seville. This year will be the 10th anniversary of the Agreement of Paris, and I think that's going to be an ambition for all of us. We want this group of work to make a very difference in this work with other discussion that we have in OCDE. This conference will be here in South Africa, and it is very, very important. So I'm really convinced that the gift will have a very important role to play in development in one side, and the other side you have the expertise of finance, and you have the necessary needs so that you can move forward. And also you are people are going to play a very important role about the contribution, about solidarity in development of the financial world. So I'm really trusting in our diversity to face all the challenges. So I can't wait to listen to your point of view, and so that we can work together. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister, for outlining the ambitions and objectives we have, particularly for 2025. Let me now call Tatiana Rosito from Brazil. Over to you, Tatiana.
Thank you, Momo. Good morning to all. Let me also commend the Minister for his words, which are also very much in tune with what we are thinking in Brazil. So good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this high-level meeting. We have been in a more, let's say, informal way taking part in this Levies, Solidarity Levies Task Force. But as we step up our efforts in 2025, especially towards COP30, and also going through FFD in June, we think it's ever the more important to be here and part of this effort. It is very convergent to what has been moving Brazil in the international domain, and especially in G20, where the combat of hunger and poverty and inequality and climate change were hand in hand. They cannot be dissociated. So, so this is really a convergent efforts, and we believe that as we move to COP30 in Belém, we are committed and doubling down on looking at all sources of revenues and leveraging or looking and pulling all levers, and for sure looking into taxes and taxes that could be at the same time effective, fair, and that deals with inequalities, deal both with climate change and inequalities, is one essential, I think, piece, bearing in mind that COP30 will be the COP as we wish to be the COP of implementation. I think in terms of the diagnosis, including on taxes, there is a lot already on the table, but this task force is essential for us to keep not only sophisticating the analysis, but most of all, as I was alluded to, building coalitions and exploring, the best and the most feasible taxes for our purposes. In the Brazilian G20 last year, we were able to reach consensus with the 20 largest economies on the Rio Declaration on International Tax Cooperation, which really embodied the concept of progressiveness. And I think tax and inequality, this has been one essential piece, so that tax and inequality is a mainstream theme in the agenda of G20. And including also as we go forward in the OECD. So I think it's this all goes together, and especially within we have shed a lot of light on the global minimum tax on billionaires. Because it is, and when I mean a tax on billionaires, could be as progressive as we can get. So we are talking, or the proposal that was put forward by Professor Zuckman, and that we facilitated discussion upon last year, talks about 3,000 people and the ability to raise over $200 billion. So it really goes in line with both national priorities and the idea to combine new resources with a very, high degree of fairness and distribution. We think emphasis should be given on accelerating decarbonization. So we should also have a clear focus on taxes that will also be aligning instruments and incentives and prices. So I think this, I know this is the choices will happen along the year as we deepen our analysis. But it's very important that we go for something that could have real transformative, I think, power. And I think we have among the taxes that are being, if we decide to concentrate on only a few, which has just also been proposed by the French minister, this also makes the analysis easier. I think we already there's a few important agreements, the fact that we can have it with the committed countries, with the coalition, but it would be important that to build the case that it could be as broad as possible. And also, I think it would be more and more to build these coalitions. It would be more and more important that we also discuss, in a very sophisticated way, as much as we can in terms of the estimates, the impact, but also the destination, because I think where we are going to put this, this sum will matter for the support that we'll have. And I think there would, some possibilities are very clear, and we have even, we have Mafalda today here. I think the climate fund should be one of the, for example, one of the main areas that we should consider. The climate funds are, in different forms, should be one of our main allies and instruments and levers for climate change. That's what either coming from Rio 92, Paris, and they are part of the history. And we know that more and more that we cannot decarbonize, we cannot transform industries and really implement a new mode of consumption and production without changing prices. That's for one, but also at this point without concessional resources. So this has to be combined. So I think we should also try to be very strategic. And by the way, we have also in G20 conducted this fostered discussions about optimizing climate funds, and the report of the high-level experts was endorsed. But and the idea behind this is because we believe those are crucial instruments, and they should be part of the solution. So we believe these make this, the G20 discussions and what goes forward makes and should make these funds stronger, not the other way around. So we are partners. We also think that there should be, we should really look into some of the details according to the percentage of emissions, you know that Brazil has been quite vocal in some discussions traditionally on the maritime tax. Not in a positive way, and that's because usually studies would show that you could have sizable impacts on the price of goods, especially food. So since also the Global South is behind, the production, and of course you need to transport food around the world, this is something that we should look with also very carefully. We are, to be sure, we are committed to look into all of those and to contribute to the discussions. I'm just really flagging that there is this note of caution for that one. But I think it would be very important also to further discuss framework tax exemptions, but also incentives that would facilitate us perhaps choosing and facilitating the design of tax to be chosen. For example, when you think of fossil fuel taxes, this has, wherever this has been implemented or tried to implement it, it has always a very controversial potential because of its impacts on fuels and on many of the goods and inflation. And it would be important that we could try to devise, for example, compensating mechanisms so that it would be easier to align, because ideally we would want to get rid of the 7 trillion subsidies, right? I think that would be one of the easiest steps, but it hasn't been done because it's not easy. So how can we develop instruments to help us go into the right direction in terms of pricing and alignment? So to conclude, and as the host country for COP30, we are committed to build a strong, fair, and ambitious climate agenda, to leave no one behind. And we are looking forward to working closely with the task force and international partners to shape this new global financial architecture and scale up resources. We are just also before concluding, it would be highly also advisable that we bring more and more representatives from the different revenue services, I think. If we are to expedite the analysis towards, and to really be able to have some concrete proposals towards COP, I think we'd have to accelerate it. And as I also see the proposal is that each country would adopt those taxes on a national basis. It will be very important to get representatives from. Of course, in our case, we'll have in the Ministry of Finance, we are also open to bring more participation from the specific representatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tatiana. I think you've just shown us how enlightened a treasury can be in leading on climate change and looking at the role of taxes and levies to assist us in decarbonizing. I was going to go to the panel, but I see our Sherpa is here. We haven't met. I would like to ask Pep from the Bridge Down Initiative just to say a few words, either from there or if you want to come over 2 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm actually the advisor to the Sherpa on this particular subject. That's okay. We
I'm just
exchange
promoting
hats.
you.
Yeah, no. Thank you. I appreciate the promotion. I'll let him know. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to go after yourself, Secretary Rosito. Thank you for the points that you've raised, but also, oh, I'm sorry. Normally told I speak too loud. And thank you to our minister colleague from France. I lead the Bridgetown initiative, and I'm very grateful that this was mentioned in your remarks. There are many initiatives that are calling for similar progress. So Bridgetown is not the only one. And I think the support and the leadership of Brazil in the coming months going to COP30 will show that this is not just around global initiatives. There's country leadership at the highest level that we need to take seriously. Secretary Rosito mentioned a couple of things that I'd just like to build on quickly. One is that we do have to look at specificities, be it around transport of food or maybe entrenched interests in certain sectors. So if we look at the fossil fuel industry, things that have been committed to but are difficult to deliver on, that is the case across every sector. It's in government, it's in private industry because of entrenched interests that we need somehow to break down. And the starting point is commitment, but then I think bit by bit, the hard work of unpacking systems that have been created and are painful sometimes to remove has to be done. There's just no way around it. So, that's the big picture. On the smaller scale, Prime Minister Motley will talk about the sensitivities as much as we are tremendously supportive as co-chair of the Solidarity Levies Task Force, some of the sensitivities that countries like Barbados and small islands will deal with, tourism-dependent economies. And while we feel very strongly on, the importance of sectors like aviation as a high-emitting sector, we have to be nuanced. So is this, penalizing economy class travelers, or is this recognizing that the bulk of the per capita emissions are in business or first class? So these are all the details that need to be figured out, from fossil fuels to aviation to shipping. But I think the key word for me is solidarity. We're at a point in time, and I don't need to lecture anyone here, but I think we're at a point in time where we have to decide whether we want to band together and solve for major issues or not. And if we've chosen that we want to act in solidarity, which I believe is my personal conviction and certainly that of Prime Minister Motley, then we have to act with urgency to get there and not get bogged down in, but what about that? And if we don't do this, we will have to solve those, but we have got to be resolutely committed to the end goal, which is raising a huge amount of resources for not just for mitigation and not just for adaptation, but also for loss and damage. So for a lot of end uses. And we will need to figure out how to make sure that those end uses are efficiently allocated and that we have the right institutions. But let us act on that in parallel to acting on where are we going to get these resources from and who must be at the table, signing on the dotted line and forcing their ministries, their treasuries, their tax authorities to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Pep. I hope it doesn't get to the stage where you have to force treasuries. I said you want treasuries to be enlightened, okay, and not Dr. Knows. So they need to be problem solvers. I know we're running short of time, so I'm going to rush over to our panel and I'll introduce them. We have a very eminent panel here just to come in for 2 minutes each. I'll start with Yusuf Hussain, who's the Director for Climate Finance and Innovation from Kenya, and he works closely with the Sherpa for this initiative, Mr. Ali Mohammed. Yusuf, as you come on, we know that Kenya is a developing country, and importantly, is one of the president is one of the co-chairs for this initiative for the task force. I guess my question is, why are you, as Kenya, advocating for solidarity levies to supplement development and climate financing?
Thank you, Momo. And I think the speakers, Tatiana and the minister, had really and Pep really put in perspective on why we need levies now more than ever. I want to bring it closer home to Africa and give a Kenyan African perspective. And to start with, I think this emanated from the championing done by Her Excellency Prime Minister Mutli and His Excellency President Ruto on the unfairness of the financial architects and finances not flowing towards Africa. Even though Africa has abundant resources that can really help accelerate achievement of global targets. So Kenya and Africa has so many reasons why we feel like levies can provide additional predictable sources of financing when you consider the debt crisis in Africa and the lack of ability, fiscal ability to borrow for most of African countries. So if you compile what happened in Baku with the intention Africa had of getting up 1.3 trillion by 2030, and also put into perspective the various studies that are done and the statistics on the need for financing, which is 2 trillion for the developing nations, excluding China, you will realize it's really critical that we source for more additional predictable financing, and hence Kenyans' intention to champion this. We are also sensitive to the fact that there are some concerns here and there, but what we are saying right now is with the good work that ECF, the secretariats, are doing, we will do impact assessments to also establish what will be the impact on a case-by-case study of these levies, so that it gets clearer that the fears we have in the various levy categories can either be dispelled or confirmed. So that is where we're headed as the task force, and I think it has gained a lot of traction of late with increasing membership, and Kenya is not the only African country in the task force, along with Zambia, Djibouti, Somalia, and a few others. I think they have joined the bandwagon to champion for these levies, and importantly, because we feel like the highest polluting sectors are not contributing to compacting of the climate change. So we are driving this from the polluter pay principle, and taking the money to where the effect is felt most, which is the global south and most vulnerable nations that have no fiscal space to borrow to compact climate change, and basically walking a very tightrope between social good development and compacting climate change. Thank you. Thank you, Mama.
Thank you, Yusuf. I think for making this clarion call for our continent, and I think the co-responsibility of the world, I think, to our many countries in Africa, which will require, together with many other countries, funding for the transition to achieve this global good. I'm going to ask Mafala Duarte, welcome here today as well from the Green Climate Fund. And perhaps just to, when we look at COP29 in Baku, given the new collective quantified goal, which suggests that the GCF the Climate Fund will need to substantially increase its finances to assist in this objective, how do you see, and at this time of limited, fiscal space, what role does the Green Climate Fund see for solidarity levies in bridging some of these funding gaps?
Thank you very much, Ismail, and thank you for having us here. It's a pleasure. And congratulations to the Global Solidarity Levies Task Force for all of the work and the initiative of the founders. It's actually great that this task force is composed as it is, because I think it's really important to have countries sit, to have Africa, to have one of the OECD, in this case France, leading, because it shows that there's a shared understanding amongst this diverse set of countries about the importance of thinking how do we mobilize more public money. So on the one hand, as Ismail, as you've mentioned, COP29 and CQG recognize the need for greater ambition, even if, of course, there will be debates as to whether it was ambitious enough or if it was framed in the most appropriate way. But there's no doubt that there's a recognition of the need for greater ambition, formulated in the form of the 300 billion and in the 1.3 trillion. We also know that how difficult it was to honor the 100 billion. So this is where this question comes of what are the tools that we are using right now and the models we have at the moment, are they serving the purpose? Are we being able to raise the level of ambition in terms of finance with the current models and tools? And we have to be honest, the answer is no. Because it took us a long time to honor the 100 billion. And now in this particular context, geopolitical context, do we see, for various circumstances, do we see this model being responsive, being able to respond to the 300 billion? Who has that hope? I mean, in this room, you can raise your hand. I think you are confident that the current model will work? Yes.
Achievement of the 300, yes, I think it's possible.
Yes. I think I'm also confident that it's possible, but that's where this question is. What are the other tools that we need in the toolkit? It doesn't mean that we will drop what we have at the moment, and we should obviously continue to support those that have been putting the money in raising their ambition level. But it's not going to be enough. So I personally have limited confidence that if we continue to invest in the current model, we are going to be able to meet the ambition that is necessary. And therefore, I commend this initiative on the levies because it presents a good opportunity. There are many options on the table. And I agree with the Minister of Finance of France and Tatiana. We have to look at what are the most plausible options that can move us forward. What are the coalitions that can come together around specific options? But I think one important point is also that Tatiana also mentioned, the just component. We have seen in the past that when certain countries have raised taxes, that have used fiscal tools to respond to climate objectives, they got some backlash from the citizens, and they had to withdraw or adjust their proposals. So not only we have to be looking very carefully at the progressiveness of the taxation, at the just component of the taxation, but how do we actually communicate this to the citizens so that we get their understanding and actually support for these initiatives? I think it's more than well understood. We've been talking about this for a long time in conferences plus conferences plus conferences, the public money is critical. We say two things. It's the private sector that can mobilize and deliver on the trillions. Nobody questions this. But also, nobody questions that there's a critical role for public money. So that's what we are talking about, is where is this public money that has the potential and has to play this role of unlocking private capital? Where is it going to come from? And predictability of this public money is really important. So that's the other dimension that other speakers have mentioned, the predictability. Because for investment, predictability is really important. So we will continue to, in our role, advocate for all of the tools that can really raise ambition, because ambition is what we need. Levies being part of it. We understand the political economy is challenging. We will have countries that are supportive of some options, not supportive of others. So how do we deal with that political economy? What are the coalitions that can move some? Because I think us thinking that, is it possible to have a global tax? It's probably quite challenging in the current political environment. So we have to be pragmatic because the climate impacts are not waiting, neither the window of opportunity to actually deal with the mitigation that is necessary. So again, I think we need the analytical work, and that's where also there's a lot of very solid research behind the Global Solidarity Levies Task Force. I think that analysis, that research is critical, looking at it from a just component as well, but looking as well at what is the political strategy. And not dissociate the political strategy with citizens, with how do we explain this to the citizens, how do we get the buy-in from the citizens, so that we don't see what we saw in previous attempts at the national level to introduce taxes that were then had to be withdrawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mafalda. Yeah, we need to be much, much more ambitious, and we still won't be ambitious enough. Let me call on Sergei Eku from the West African Development Bank. Sergei, I think just being here at FIX and the role of the... Oh, sorry. It's a wide table. Okay, so let me jump onto you, Vera. We're not leaving we're leaving the best for the last. Sorry to have you so late. I guess my question is, what's the? I should introduce you properly. So Vera is in the global. Maybe you can explain it on the expert group, and I think we're honored to have you here. We would like to just sort of get your insight on how you see the opportunity for solidarity levies to be a sort of transformational lever to close the development and finance gap. And what changes do you see in the financial system that need to happen to help us realize this opportunity? Over to you, Vera.
Thank you, Ismail. You know that it's too early in the morning when you don't know what Global Solidarity Levies Task Force is. That is what that abbreviation is. So it's probably too early in the morning. No, thank you. It's a good thing to be here, and just following up on Minister Tani and Secretary Rosito and yourself and everybody else, Pep and Mafalda, and of course, Ali. I think three things, and I sit here and I wonder a little bit, and so maybe since it's so early in the morning, let's wake up a little bit. In economics, we have something called the Pigouvian tax, which means that if you do bad, then we have to tax you, and then you have to pay for it. This is sort of clear, straightforward stuff. And I kind of worry a little bit when we talk about solidarity, because then it sort of moves from the pure economic analysis to feel-good stuff. And I think for 60 years, we know that feel-good stuff does not work. And so the word solidarity, I think we have to be careful with it, because yes, solidarity is important because it means that we are coming together in partnership and that we want to do it together. But I think that we could also be running the risk of saying that it's a feel good and not a must do. And the must do part is that we only have one planet. And if we are not able to work towards reducing our carbon and methane emissions and protecting our biodiversity and our vegetation, we're in trouble. And so I think there is a little bit of that tension there. And then when you go back a little bit and you look, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Kenya, a lot of the developing countries, Pakistan, I think, have all taken away their fossil fuel subsidies. Difficult macroeconomic decisions that have been made. And then, we have $7 trillion of production taxes in the fuel sector. And we say, oh, maybe not, let's call it solidarity, let's not call it solidarity. What did we call the Nigeria removal of the fossil fuel subsidies? Was it solidarity or was it just economic imperative? Because it was not a progressive tax, it was regressive and it was bad economics. I think that we need to be able to sort of figure that out. And we are in a situation today where, I don't know if we've checked the news, but solidarity is not a popular word. Our populations want growth. Our populations are asking, as Tatiana said, we want you to think about us and make sure that we can be better than we were last year. And so I think the communication around, we're doing this because we want to be solidaire with somebody a little bit further afield, it's probably not going to win us many votes. I think if we are saying we're doing this because it's good economics, because it's more efficient to make sure that we have a more progressive tax, and so the incidence, when you look at the table, I think that the team has put out, it's the airlines 0% taxes and the car industry 60%. Clearly, that is extremely regressive, right? I think this kinds of conversations maybe what the Brazil is doing with the world tax under the G20 is a very clear and I think extremely well communicated, and we can all learn from that. There's some successes maybe on how we do it. It's not clear to me also, and Secretary Rosito spoke a little bit about, once we've collected it, what is the redistribution process? We know that the G20 economies contribute 80% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So one could say, well, maybe the faster we can reduce the emissions, the better for the rest of the world. But we also know that the small island developing states, Barbados and the rest of the world, are inordinately impacted by that. And so how do we do this distribution? Are we doing it back into the sectors so that they can improve? And Secretary Rosito is right. Yes, we on the continent today are talking about the common border adjustment mechanism. If you hit us with common border adjustment mechanism, then you hit us with a shipping tax, then you hit us with, it's huge inflation, it's going to be very difficult. But maybe we need to do it because, the future, if we don't do it, is probably more dire than if we did it. So I think three things that I want to leave us with is, one, maybe as we communicate the solidarity conversation, we do need to communicate it as a partnership conversation, but that there is also an economic imperative on how we do good, progressive taxes, and that, if there is a common bad, we need a common solution for that through a taxation mechanism. Where in South Africa today, the budget hasn't passed because they don't want to do a VAT tax. Taxes, nobody likes taxes, and people hold budgets up and can bring down government. So we know the difficulty of how that can work. But I think there is a communication part that we need to maybe talk about. I think finally, and I stop here, is really looking at when we bring together the advanced economies for Africa in particular. We have been talking about EITI, base erosion and price shifting, and sort of some of these basic taxes that we know how to collect, we know where they are, and we haven't gotten a lot of progress on that as well. And I think as we talk about this new levies, let's also look at whether we can go backwards and raise some resources directly from these other revenue streams that we haven't done well enough to get the revenues out of. In the news today, we're all talking about rare minerals, and there's going to be a different kind of tax coming from the US. Can we standardize that and make sure that every other country then is using the same system as we will use in the current U.S. Ukraine rare minerals, with some degree of transparency around it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vera. I guess the challenge is, as you point out, is, the economics could be clearly argued, but the whole world doesn't seem to, there are important forces in the world who don't agree that emissions are bad. And that's what gets you into the politics. But I know we're running out of time, and sorry, I was meant to say that you're the co-chair of the Independent High-Level Expert Group on Climate Finance, so apologies. We don't really have time for questions, but maybe we can take a quick round of comments. So let me just open to the floor. I know we've only got 5 minutes. Nobody? William, you can't keep quiet.
Just to thank you first, because I think the way you have framed this discussion is great, to have these different points of view. From a French Treasury point of view, I think that indeed we see a tension. We have had in France the experience of raising the carbon tax, and how we have already a carbon tax, but raising it further higher, it creates indeed the difficulties you have mentioned. So this is why I had the feeling that the way the task force has analyzed the different potential levies, it's additional levies, it's great because we have different dimensions to look at that. And so we have, in a way, a menu of options to be presented at political level. And they have to make choices. My personal view is that we have some levies, some tax, which are quite difficult to absorb by households or by companies. And so there is, when there is a political acceptance, then they want to see the results at home. And for example, if you have a carbon tax which increases the fuel you put on your car, they want to see more buses in cities. So for this type of tax, I have always said that it's much more difficult to channel them for big global solidarity objectives. We see that for other taxes, it's a bit different. When you tax with a small percentage, but when you tax financial transactions, I think that you don't have this issue. You don't have financial people in the streets saying that, no, I have to see my money back in another way. No. It's the same also for airline tickets. If you tax the business class passengers, they don't go to the street saying, I want the money back for something else. No. So, so this is why and of course you have things in the middle. Maritime transport, I understand that it has some redistribution consequences, etc. So this is why, for me, I think depending on the tax, some of them I think very difficult to channel them to solidarity objectives. Some of them quite easy, and in the middle, perhaps it's possible to have a percentage, but not directly going to a green climate fund or other, but just a political commitment that a percentage of this money within the budget appropriation, budget allocation, will be focused on climate or development, etc. So, and this is why the way the work has been done to present different options at and then the politicians we will have to take decisions.
Thanks. Okay, I don't think we have actually time for any other comments. Okay, quickly, in 30 seconds.
Actually, it was going to be a question for the minister, so I'll pass.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Sorry, I know we constrained for time, so apologies. So let me just close this discussion since we have to leave by 9. I I think this is just the start of a conversation. The taking on this objective is, I think we all know, is not easy, especially given how people respond to any taxes, as William has outlined. I think even the bankers will come out, William, on the streets when you have taxes, okay? Or they'll do it more subtly, like they do it in other countries. But you know, we all know it's a hard challenge, but we really need, I think, for the sake of not just our generation, but for future generations, I think, to be much more ambitious than we've been. I think that later generations will look at us and condemn us for not acting sufficiently. And I think on solidarity levies, then, hard as it is, given the 1.3 trillion goal per annum that will be specified in the Baku to Belém roadmap that's been specified, that we want to see real progress on this road. It does provide an important lever, I think, to close the gap between the development and climate finance gap that's required. I know that, I mean, to quote Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it's done. So let's do it. We're going to need to convince a lot of people. We're going to have to win over a lot of people. But we have started, and we need to intensify our efforts in that direction. But thank you very much.
Out of